Good evening. My name's Jean Anderson, and I'm the Director of Education for CASA. And I also work with the Cross Ministry Committee on FASD to deliver this video series. Welcome and thank you for attending this evening's session with Priscilla Asamoah, entitled Financial Literacy for Individuals with FASD, and also entitled Money Management FASD Style. Before I fully introduce Priscilla, there are a few housekeeping tips I'd like to pass on. We're using a town hall format in which you can submit questions for the speaker by email to cys.fasd@gov.ab.ca or by texting 780-405-3376. And Priscilla will answer your questions as they're directed to her. All sites have been muted at the bridge, but please be sure that your mics are also muted. If you have questions for the presenter, his or her contact information can be found on the back of your handouts as well. And if you experience any technical issues, please let your local site contact know, and they will follow up accordingly. We're pleased to let you know that there are approximately 60 sites logged on today, and with 125 people registered. Education and training is a critical strategy in the FASD 10-year strategic plan that the Government of Alberta has continued to address through various initiatives such as the video conferencing learning series. We're pleased that with the ongoing interest and attendance with this initiative. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Priscilla. Priscilla has 12 years of frontline experience working with families and communities. She's worked with the Edmonton Financial Literacy Society to develop and deliver financial literacy programs for marginalized groups, including persons with disabilities, Aboriginal women, immigrants, and youth. She's conducted workshops for those who work with low-income families and has instructed for Grant MacEwan College and the University of Victoria. She now works with CASA, Child, Adolescent, and Family Mental Health, with children and families affected by mental health disorders. Priscilla is currently completing her graduate degree in adult education at the University of Alberta. And I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Priscilla for the past 3 years and know her to be smart, practical, and compassionate. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Jean, for a warm welcome. I want to thank all the people who are in the room today, and to welcome all those in video land. The topic we're talking about today, financial literacy, money management skills. This is something that has become more important for us to talk about due to the economic crisis. In the last couple of years, if you turn on your television or your radio, you're hearing more and more information about how important it is for us all to manage our money. And for the last 8 to 10 years, I've worked with many individuals and families who are in low-income settings or limited financial means. And for the longest time, I worked really hard with families to advocate and find more resources, more money to support them. As time went on, I realized that it is not enough for me to find resources for families. It is just as important for me to know that they know how to use those resources. So I started to develop and come up with ways to help my families and the individuals that I work with learn better ways to work with their money, even though they're limited. So financial literacy, money management for individuals with FASD. I've worked alongside many individuals, child care services workers, to find ways for us to work with families and individuals and youth to manage their money better. So for today's session, our goal, and my goal, is to get involved with you and to show you a little bit more information about financial literacy for individuals with FASD, to understand financial literacy challenges for children, youth, in care, and those who are affected by FASD, and ways that caregivers, service providers can support those with FASD. So, as I stated before, the world is changing, and with it comes challenges for all individuals. Many of us are encouraged, if not forced, to adapt personally and professionally to the changing market economy in order to compete with the rest of the world. For the last 30 years or so, education has been marketed to us as a way to get ahead personally and financially. So I started to ask myself, what about those who do not get to the higher pyramid of education? Does that mean they are cut off from the financial wealth that's accessible to all of us? Or is there a way that we can help individuals who may not reach the PhD degree level or maybe college level? These individuals are still entitled to have some means of financial security. Making effective financial decisions and knowing how to manage your money are critical to enjoying a secure financial future. Yet many individuals and families, like I said before, lack this knowledge. So what is financial literacy? What is money management? Financial education is defined as knowledge that helps people make sound, informed financial decisions. And there are many studies that have shown that financial literacy training has a positive impact on financial knowledge. So if you are shown how to do this, it is possible that individuals with cognitive disabilities are able to learn how to manage their money better. So what would this do for individuals with FASD that I work with, that you work with, parents who are trying to support their children and teens with FASD? What money management skills would do is to help to reduce the chances of individuals with FASD turning to crime to meet their basic needs. Another point that this might do is to help to reduce the rate of homelessness for individuals with FASD. And my hope and my belief in what I have seen in the past is that when individuals have the tools and the skills regarding money management, they're able to resist the temptation of the consumerism society that we live in. We all see it all the time. We're bombarded often with commercials and ways for us to use our money, and I'm going to talk about that more. The importance of financial literacy education for individuals with FASD and cognitive disabilities cannot be underestimated. Many individuals with FASD, due to lack of knowledge and skill, do not have the opportunity to control their own finances. So what does that mean? What ends up happening is that they don't have control and autonomy on both their primary and secondary daily living activities. Primary is where you live, what to wear, what to eat. Secondary activities are how to spend the weekend, savings and investments, medical services, to name a few. The reason why this subject is so important, that it must be part of any treatment plan when working with individuals with FASD, is this. We know from research that about 70% of individuals with FASD struggle with getting social services. 66% struggle with getting medical care. About 47% struggle with staying out of trouble, crime, jail. Yet 80%, let me repeat, 80% struggle with money management skills. I was under the impression, for the most part, when I work with my families and clients, that they may have picked up some of these money management skills and financial literacy skills from schools, from the K-12 system. And yes, the K-12 system goes a long way to address ways in which we think. But the K-12 system does not always meet financial educational levels for students with FASD. Some of the reasons are time constraint, the need for repetition. We know that individuals with FASD learn better through rote training and many, many practices. And schools, when it comes to money management, are not always able to do that. We also know that practical applications helps for individuals with FASD to retain information. The school is not going to be able to take the child to grocery shopping every weekend. Therefore, it's important that this information is taught by parents. There are also other teaching priorities and curriculum limitations. When teachers are preparing students to write the achievement test, it is very hard for them to prepare them to go to the grocery store, to know how to count all the monies, and to know how to prepare food for themselves. The schools go a long way to help us to do that, but for individuals with FASD, there needs to be more information. So having access to money doesn't always mean that individuals know how to manage money. And that's what I learned. Many times I would struggle to get financial services for my clients. I would double their income within 2 weeks. And a week later, unfortunately, I would get a phone call saying, I need to go to the food bank or I can't pay my rent. It's not because these people did not want to do these things. What has happened is that they were often unknowledgeable and they used their money unwisely. Financial literacy for youth in care is another subject I think we need to address and we need to talk about often. We know there are many youth in care who struggle with getting out on their own. We know there's lots of SIL programs, semi-independent programs that are designed to help youth in care move from living with support to living on their own. Unfortunately, from my experience and from what I've seen, many of the youth struggle with financial literacy when they get on their own. Often the programs that we provide do not always have enough information to prepare them for financial readiness. There's not in-depth financial knowledge, and there's limited strategies for them to avoid financial hardship. As a result, often the youth end up going from one dependent system to another dependent system. So from the child welfare system to the welfare system. Canadian youth who have aged out of the child welfare system have consistently and clearly identified what types of services and resources that they need to assist them in transition care. They have spoken of their frustration of being cut off from the system once they reach of age. I know in Alberta we have an age limit of up to 22 years of age, and I think that goes a long way to help individuals who have cognitive disabilities. But for those who do not, still need the support. The youth in care research has shown that youth also indicated that along with the loss of supportive relationships, financial hardship was the most difficult aspect of leaving care. Because when you are in care, there are certain limits that helps youth to manage. Once youth leave care, it is very difficult for them to be on their own and to manage all those financial strategies themselves. It appears that there are some financial assistance for youth. We know youth can go to AISH. There are some child welfare support that youth can get, but there is limited financial training for youth. So what does this mean? In order for us to address financial literacy and money management skills, we must look at the impact of marketing. It is hard to know where your money is going if you don't know what is affecting your money. For individuals with FASD, the impact of marketing and advertisers are deadly. Often individuals with FASD lack impulse control, and high amounts of exposure to advertising can make it hard to manage your money. That happens to almost all of us. You go to the store to get one thing and you come back with 3 things. So all of us have some sort of impulse control that we all have to manage sometimes. But for individuals with FASD who are living on limited income, this is not a step that they can afford to take at times. The reason why advertisers market to children is that children represent three distinctive markets. The first market is that they represent direct money that the child spent. So the allowance they get from their parents, the allowance they get from other people. Those are direct money that children can spend. The other influence is that children influence household income and what is spent in the household. There's more and more research that is coming out that is showing that children are influencing more and more what items are bought in the home than any age group. And that's why advertisers are marketing to children. The last thing that marketers use is that children represent future market. This is great news for us because what it means is that if they can create a habit when you are young, you can continue with that habit when you're an adult. What makes it hard is that children do not always know the difference between what the commercials are there for. That the commercials are designed to sell products. Advertisers also recognize one important thing, is that the brand loyalties and consumer habits are formed when children are young, and they can be carried out through adulthood. Therefore, this is what's happened. In the last 10 years, so in 1990, advertisers were spending $100 million to advertise to children. In 2005, it increased to $2.5 billion. The reason why is if we can hook them when you're young, this will continue on when they're older. The great thing about this information is that parents, caregivers, and childcare workers can also use this information to help people with FASD. That's what's one great thing about it. Some of the products that are targeted at children are beverages. I'm sure we all see that all the time. Mobile phones. I've always been surprised, and I don't know if you've thought about it yourself. You go into a toy store and you have a fake cell phone. What does a 2-year-old need with a fake cell phone? Well, if they have a fake cell phone at 2, when they are 9, 10, 11, they might ask you for a real one. Another thing that advertisers do is snack items we know, candy and chocolates we see all the time. The Cartoon Network. I don't know if you or me, if you've ever seen Saturday morning cartoons and how much cereal is advertised to children. And some of these cereals often come with a prize, a game inside, something to hook them to. And how much of those advertisers they see, they do it over and over and over again. Repetitious advertising. This is what we can use to help children with FASD and adults with FASD. There are some products that are targeted at adolescents as well. We all know that cell phones are huge, different colors. iPhones, video games are huge in our world right now. Some of the social networking places are also areas that advertisers are able to market their things. Facebook, Nexopia, Twitter, and all those other internet sites. They do have pop-ups, so it's not free when you go to Facebook. It's free to you, but advertisers are paying for the space. There are also products that are targeted at parents for children and adolescents. And as a parent, it's important for you to realize that and for you not to get hooked at. So some of the things that are on the list you probably recognize: fast food, candy, chocolate, vacations, medications. I mean, I remember seeing a commercial where it's like Dr. Mom. You know, a lot of cough medicines will advertise on emotions so the parents will buy it. Because if you use this medication, then you become a Dr. Mom. So those are the things that as parents you need to be aware of as well. All of us can be persuaded by advertising messages. And they often play on our vulnerabilities, including concerns with appearance, self-identity, peers, and sexuality. I've always been interested in the commercial where to sell a hamburger, they're letting us know that the hamburger's name are Mama Burger, Papa Burger, Uncle Burger. It's one meal, but there is a hook to that when you hear those names. So be aware and pay attention to those advertising. So some of these advertising and marketing strategies make it very hard to manage money. It makes it very hard for us to be able to control the way we spend if we're not careful. And what happens is sometimes it leads to poor financial literacy. For people at FASD are often affected by some of these financial pitfalls and habits they get into when they're young due to control issues, actions, and reactions. And some of these issues we all probably face ourselves. But, like I stated before, it's one of the things that we all want to help individuals with FASD to avoid. So some of the issues that's come out of it: impulse spending. Going to the mall to buy a t-shirt and you come home with a new cell phone, 3 sweatshirts, a pair of the latest running shoe, and no t-shirts. Many parents who have adolescents will be able to talk to you about how frustrating that is for them at times. Another issue that comes out of poor financial health is obsessive spending. You decide to buy something and nothing will change your mind. And I know for parents who have adolescents, when they come to you and they say they want a Wii or the new iPod, nothing will change their mind either. They want it and they want it now. So those are some of the things that come up. And they start when they're young. Hoarding. They need to have the latest fashion or the latest gadgets. Technology is changing all the time. So often when children or teens buy cell phones or iPod, by the time they get it home at times it's almost obsolete. Or their new friend got the latest gadgets and they want it. So often that leads to a lot of hoarding. If you go to many people's homes right now, you find lots of gadgets and lots of things that are being used and many that are not being used. So the question is, are we buying too much? Overspending. Buying more than one can afford. Planning or failing to plan for expenses. This is something that can be very difficult for individuals with FASD. But there's ways, I'm going to talk about that later on in terms of strategies that we can plan around that. So constantly needs money to pay for fees and for things that they're committed to but they forgot about. Procrastinating is also another one. I believe that for the individuals that have worked with FASD, the procrastination sometimes comes out of memory loss, the inability to remember some of the things that they've meant to do. So it often comes across as procrastinating. So we would say they don't follow through, need lots of queuing. For the adults, doesn't always follow through with paying fees or other expenses even though they have the money available. So often queuing is important. So what can we do when it comes to marketing? This is the beginning part of some of the strategies when we talk about financial literacy. Because it's not enough to just say, here's your money, let's make a budget. That sometimes works and other times it's not in depth enough. So we need to do more. So what can we do when it comes to marketing? It's important for us to teach children to distinguish the difference between reality when looking at advertising. Explaining to them how advertising works is important. So that's for us adults. We also need to understand that for ourselves. Point out the tricks of the trade. Like I stated earlier, Mama Burger, Papa Burger, really, they're selling a hamburger. Explain how marketers target young people. Talk about food advertising and what's in it. Talk about the value of money. And that will come up, we'll talk about that more focusing on the needs versus our wants. Discuss how to be wise and responsible consumer and co-view television with your children. Like I mentioned before, it's important for us all to watch shows with our children, to watch for violent content and other things. But watching for advertising gives you opportunity to be able to teach your adolescent and your teen about some of the advertising tricks that are out there. For you as an individual, do not be fooled by advertisers. Know the difference between what you need and what you want. Seek and reach advice. Ask questions, not only of yourself, but those around you. Prepare and consult your budget. For money management and financial literacy to work for individuals with FASD, it's important that we talk about some of the pitfalls for them to avoid. And those are scams, protecting themselves from fraud, buying on credit, and how much does buying on credit cost, and payday loans. So access to finance is only the tip of the iceberg. Understanding is what helps avoid future pitfalls. Some of the common scams that are out there that it's important for adults and service providers to be aware of are, number one, phishing scam. Email comes requesting information. It appears to be something that is from a legitimate institution. It tells you to go and link onto this site and provide personal information. Do not respond or click on this link. Often what happens is they have your information and you are not able to get it back. Your bank will never ask for this information over the email. It's important for individuals to report this to the banking institution. Another scam that's come up a lot, and I think for teens who are out and about, we need to let them know and be aware of, is ATM scams. And I think some people have heard about this on television, on the radio, in terms of fake parts being put over on the areas where we insert our cards, and the individuals are able to get our PIN numbers and later use it to withdraw money. So ask your teen, you yourself, check to make sure the machine does not have anything in it and it's clear before you use it. Bank scams. This is rare, but it seems it's coming up more and more, and it's something that we need to be aware of. Someone will approach you and tell you that they're working for the bank and investigating a member of their staff. They will ask you to help them by withdrawing money and reporting to the teller, and reporting the teller's conduct. How to avoid is to say no thank you, go straight to the bank, and talk to an individual inside the bank. Temporary suspension of your cards or charges. This will come in an email or phone call. It's really important to not give information over email or over the phone, to go directly to the bank and talk to an individual, especially for individuals with FASD who are starting to get a handle on their money management skills. Commission scams. These come across through email, phone, calls telling you that you're looking for an employee in Canada, and they are going to transfer funds to you, and you can transfer the funds back to them. These are scams important for us to all be aware of and to avoid as well. I'm putting these on for you to share with your clients and with your children and teens, to be aware that if they are approached, they are not surprised by these. You've won scams. Those come by telephone, email, or faxes. If you've won something, they should not be asking you for your information. They should have that information already. So it's important for us to make sure that they avoid that as well. Bogus charity. This has been happening more and more, and it's happening a little bit more in the Edmonton area as well, where you get a call or someone who approach you asking for money for a charity, and often it's for themselves, it's not for the charity. It's important to be suspicious, ask for an ID, look up the number yourself. Donation is important, but at the same time, we want to make sure it's going to the right charities. Protecting yourself from fraud. These are some of the items that can be used to commit fraud. PIN number, phone number, driver's license, credit card, date of birth, social insurance number, bank account statement, address, and bills. When parents are talking to the children and teens about money management, these are also important things to talk to them about, so that as they get older, they are not hooked in. It's important to ask lots of questions. Do not give your information out like I stated. Check your credit report or credit card statements. Review your bank statements. Those are important. You can do some of this stuff with your children and teens as well. What are you doing, Mom? I'm reviewing my statement. I'm making sure that my information is all correct and it hasn't been tampered with. There's a couple of places that we can report any suspicious activity or if any scam has been used against us. The RCMP has a website that I've added to your information that you can go to. There's another company called Phone Busters that you can also call and email if you've come across any of these scams. Also contacting the company or the bank and reporting what has happened to you is important, would make a difference. So those are things to avoid. The last thing to avoid before we move to strategies is buying on credit. One of the reasons why we are in a bit of a recession in the last year and a half to 2 years is often we bought more than we could afford. We've heard about many people buying homes that they couldn't afford, many people buying lots of luxury items that they couldn't afford. So we are all being forced or being asked to adapt the way we spend our money and the way we think about money. And buying on credit needs to be planned. We've started to take it for granted. It's becoming more common for us to buy on credit without thinking or monitoring it. And without a doubt, using credit card increases the cost of an item. And buying on rent to own, and I've worked with lots of low income families who thought that was the easiest way to go. Buying items on rent to own is the most expensive way to buy. I'll show you some examples why. So how much does buying on credit cost? So you're walking down the street and you see an ad blaring, $12.95 a week for a DVD player. And you think, oh, I can afford $12.95. $12.95 is not too bad. And it'll probably be a small print that says, paid over 58 weeks. Well, that same DVD player will end up costing you $750, about 3 times as much if you were to rent to own. So if you went to the store and the guy said to you, you know what, this DVD is going to cost you $750, you might think twice. But through advertising and marketing, you think $12.95. Credit card is another way that we can get overcharged. A flat screen television might cost you $2,000. If you were to use a credit card, that charges about 27%. It would end up costing you $2,600 for that same flat screen television. I also see many ads on television, on the radio about buy now and pay later. Do not pay to 2020. Do not pay to 2000 and this. Those are all hooks to get us in the store. And that $1,000 couch might end up costing you $1,700. So those are things we need to think about. Payday loans are a huge, huge debt cycle for individuals. I worked with many families in low incomes who did not have a bank account and thought that payday loans was their way of borrowing and cashing their checks. And I was really sad to hear how much money they lost while they were on limited income. Payday loans are short-term loans, and they're meant to be paid back in 2 weeks. They are not often regulated by the government, and there's very little consumer protection. Therefore, their goal is to make as much profit as possible. But when I've seen the advertising on TV, it comes across that they're here to help you. They're here to help you have a better weekend or have a better couple of weeks. But the bottom line is that payday loans are here to make as much money as possible. And how they make their money is through multiple fees and high interest charges. Do you know that if you pay back your money earlier, you get charged extra fees? If you pay back your money late, you get charged extra fees. You get charged extra fees for setup, extra fees. So sometimes people are paying up to 60% back on their payday loans. And once you get stuck in the cycle, it is very hard to get out of. So as much as possible, we need to help individuals who are on limited income avoid payday loans. So now we come to some of the money management skills that we want to teach ourselves, our children, and our youth. So I think that the way money management should be taught with individuals with FASD is to start on areas that I think are the easiest. I think often we think it's the hardest thing to do, but in many cases it's the easiest thing to do when you're working with youth and children. Start at the top of the pyramid, which is savings and investing. Savings and investing can be done automatically. You don't always have to think about it. If we can make it rote training, just like the advertisers do, it will make life easier for individuals as they grow up. Banking, budgeting, price comparison, and purchasing are other ways that we can look at money management. Computing and record keeping are also important to manage money management. So saving and investing, knowing how to use your money to make money for you. Banking is knowing how to gain access to your money. Budgeting, knowing how much money you can spend. Knowing how to spend money wisely is price comparison and purchasing. Computing and record keeping, knowing how much money one has. I think those areas are the last area, which is computing and record keeping, are really hard for individuals with FASD because it requires so many steps. Saving and investing, not so much. So what are some of the strategies that we can start with? I'm going to start with the strategies for adults because in order for children and adolescents to learn how to manage their money, they learn from us as adults. So parents and caregivers must watch how they spend their money and use some of the strategies they use for themselves, for their children and youth. So for adults, know your banking rights. Ability to choose the right account that is for you is important. Comparison shopping for rates, services, and charges. I've done lots of groups with Aboriginal women, immigrants who just came into the country, youth. And I was always so surprised and so upset to hear that they're paying $25 to $50 a month in service charges because the account that they chose for themselves was not the right account for them. Therefore, they were spending more money. And for people who are in limited income, $50 or $30 a month is a lot of money. So often what I did was work with families to reduce the amount of rates they were paying at the bank. There are lots of banks that are offering no-cost fees to do your banking. And for individuals who are on limited income, this is one of the accounts they should be choosing or working with their banks to actually acquire those kind of services. Another way for adults to understand and work better with their money is knowing when your bills are due. If we can organize adults' bills to come on the same day as when they get their checks, most of the primary expenses can come out on the same day, which requires less thought. If they're coming on different days, then there's more chances for you to miss a payment, for you to forget to payment, and you'll be in arrears. Once you miss that payment and you spend the money elsewhere, it's hard to catch up. So arranging for automatic payments of primary expenses such as rent, utilities, and savings, paying yourself first, will help in getting a hold of how to manage your money. Understanding interest rates. I just showed you 3 different examples of interest rates where if you use rent to own, you pay a certain amount. If you borrow, pay now and later, you are spending a certain amount. If you use your credit card, you're spending a certain amount. So understanding different interest rates will make a difference in your financial management skills. Another way that we can manage our money is to track the way we spend our money. And there's going to be a sheet that's coming up that's going to show ways that we can do that. So tracking your expenses are important because if you know where your money is going, then you're able to organize it better. Sometimes we think we only spend $300 on groceries, when in fact, in reality, you're spending about $500 in groceries. So if you do your budget before you've tracked your budget, you will never really know where your money is going. If you're able to track it before you plan it, you have more accuracy in your planning, in your budget. Knowing the difference between your needs and your wants. I'm going to keep harping on that because I think sometimes we get into financial trouble when we're not clear on what the difference is between our needs and our wants. And those can be blurry. Knowing how to adjust your spending. Avoid spending money that you don't have as adults. So this is one way that one of the things I've used for adults to think about money. So what can you do with $3,600? I would ask people. So $3,600 can buy you $300 a month worth of groceries for about a year. It can also buy you 5,000 liters of gas. If you wanted to see a movie at a theater almost every single day and you didn't have a job and you didn't have any place to go, you can actually see about 300 movies in a theater. You can take a trip to Cuba. You can have a weekly facial and a manicure, which is always a good thing. You can invest the money and have about $50,000 after a year. Or you can smoke a pack a day of cigarettes. Once we know what we want to do with our money, we can make better choices. Another tip for money management is the skip and save method. So adjusting your spending. If you were to cut out your coffee beverages every morning, so you get a $2 coffee every morning, if you were to cut it out, if you were to skip that, you would save yourself about $500 to $700 a year. If you eat out lunches, if you're not taking lunches to work, you could save yourself about $1,500 to $2,100 a year. When you're on limited income, all these add up. So ask yourself, what could I skip so that I can save? We're back to the needs and wants again. So these are some items that I've put together for people to think about when they're looking at their needs and wants. We know housing is a need, personal clothing is a need. It doesn't have to be the brand name stuff, but clothing is a need, groceries is a need, transportation is a need for people to be able to get around, to get to medical services, to get to other appointments. Eating out, is it a need or not? A lot of teens will tell me that's definitely a need. Like, I have to have my fast food. It's not a want, it's a need. But you can adjust for yourself what's a need or a want. When you're on limited income, eating out, entertainment, gifts, alcohol and cigarettes, those are wants. Other items that you may want to identify for yourself and to think about with family or other people that you're working with is cell phones, child support, monthly loans, toys, household cleaning products. You get to decide what's a need and what's a want. One of the ways for us to stay on track with our budget and money management is to come up with an adult dream mind map plan. If we know what we want, it's less easier for us to be tempted by advertisers. So for adults, for children, and for youth, if you are able to take pictures of what you're wanting for your future, whether in the next 6 months, in the next year, in the next 5 years, and put it in a place where you can see regularly, it will help with the temptations when you are outside of the house as well. It'll help with the questions you can ask yourself. Do I really want this? Does this fit into my dream map? It's important for adults to identify their assets. So what are some things that are asset to you that you must keep close to you? So your home is an asset. Is it a place that you like? Is it a place that is working for you? Can you adjust? Do you need to adjust that? Do you need a roommate when we work with teens to help you with your budget? So food, clothing, transportation, like I said before. Bank accounts are a huge asset when you're looking at your finances. Debit cards, credit cards, insurance. Sometimes we don't even file our tax returns. I've helped clients do tax returns for 5 years, failing to see that these are assets that they can use to help them with their finances. Adult asset mind map is also important to do for yourself. So education is part of your asset. Finances is part of your asset. Family, support system. Who can you call when you have temptations or when you have obstacles in your life? Individuals in your life can be assets. Not too long ago, I read an article of 7 most influential women in the world. And they all have one thing in common. They came from different places in life, different backgrounds. They were in different businesses. The one thing they all had in common is the ability to connect with people and support systems. That's the number one thing they all had in common. So it's important for us to grow our people assets, because those individuals can help us get to the next step. Strategies for children. I know lots of individuals had wrote in, has talked about what kind of strategies, how do we teach our children to learn how to manage their money better so that they don't have the same problems we do when we are adults. And some of the strategies that adults are using, you can use with your children, but we can adapt it and pare it down to meet their needs. So teaching your children about the practical value of money, the difference between their needs and wants. I know for children that's very unclear because everything is a want. I want this and I want this and I want that. But we can help them slowly to know the difference as they are growing up. Avoid talking in codes and proverbs. Money doesn't grow on trees. To how much do you think I'm made out of money? We go on and on and on when we're talking to children about money. And next to money, though, is very interesting. Next to sexual education, money is one of the least things that we talk to children about. Yet it affects our lives so much. So why are we not talking to children more about money? If we talk to them, often we're kind of complaining about it. We're not always giving them accurate information. So for younger children, we can start off really small by teaching them to recognize the difference in dollar amounts. For children with FASD, it can go by color. The $5 is blue. $10 is purple. And there's many other ways that we can teach children to recognize money. Some of the strategies that we've worked with parents to help children with FASD is to post routines at home so that you're not having to cue children over and over again. We can adapt those routines by posting visual references of money or items that are expensive, items that are inexpensive, so that when they're around the house, they see those as well. Teaching children about the difference between savings accounts, about the assets, so savings, people on your team are also important. I'm going to give you more examples about that. One of the games that we have to make financial literacy fun for children. We know that children learn through play. They're not going to sit here and say, tell me what your budget is or any of that stuff, and you're not supposed to. So what we want to do is make it as fun and exciting as possible for them. So we'll use what the advertisers do, like I said. We've all seen the Pepsi commercial and the Coke commercials where they cover the two items and they get you to guess, which is a Pepsi or a Coke. Well, for parents, what you can do is to get items that are brand name, that are not brand name, expensive items, not expensive items. They can take a taste test and guess to see which one is the cheapest and which one is the more expensive. Can they notice a difference? And how come you chose the cheapest or how come you chose the one that is not most expensive? Another thing that I've done with children and youth is to ask them for about a week, we will go around deciding what can we do with $10. So we'll come up with as many things that we can do with $10. And then we can increase it $20 to $50. So some things for the younger children, it could be $1. What could you buy with $1? What can you buy with $5? We know that with $10, I've said to them, I can buy 2 Happy Meals. That'll be $10. I can make a casserole with $10. That'll feed about 4 to 6 people. I could buy a whole piece of chicken for $10. So as parents, you can lay these items down for them to see what $10 actually buy them. Remember, we need to be practical, it needs to be repetitive, and it needs to be hands-on. So you can make it fun and exciting for them by putting some of these items. They can touch it, they can feel it, they can decide, oh, this is great or not great. But it gives you an opportunity to talk about money, but at the same time, we're not guilting it, we're not making it a negative experience, we're making it a positive experience. And they're starting to develop values about money. So you can choose different things. Like for us adults, we can go to Mexico or we can go see a movie. Those are choices they're going to have to make as well. Opening a bank account. This is very important. If you remember in the pyramid before, I've said at the beginning, savings is the number one thing that we have to teach children with FASD because it can be automatic. So for young children, you start off with your piggy bank. But what you do with your piggy bank is that you deposit your coins or whatever money you're going to give them at either the 15th of the month or the 30th of the month. Why? Because when they become adults and they go out of their home or they get a job on their adolescence, they're probably going to be paid on the 30th or the 15th of the month. So let's create these habits when they're younger. As the children move to around 6 to 7 years old, I encourage every one of you to help them get a bank account. And with that bank account, you could take them on the 15th and the 30th of the month. Remember, when advertisers show commercials, they don't show it once. They do it repetitively. They do it often because that's how we get hooked and that's how our habits are formed. So if you go on the 15th, on the 30th of the month, it helps them. And you know what? Some people might say, you know what? I don't have the money. Where am I supposed to? If you have a penny, just go to the bank and deposit it. The bank will take the money. If you have $1, sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less. It's okay. It's the act of going that is the most important thing. So another way you can also help children with money management is we have lots of incentive programs that helps children with their behaviors. These incentive programs can be adapted with money. So if they grab a toy, I know sometimes what we'll do is you can pick a toy from the chest. So this toy will cost either $3 or $5 of fake money. So they can start to recognize, you know what, maybe I want a $3 toy or maybe I want a $5 toy. This can also help with a bit of delayed gratifications, which we know is really hard for kids. Helping children to identify their needs and wants are also just as important. Help them to see that the Xbox is truly not a need. I know they're going to disagree with you, but the Xbox is definitely not a need, it's a want. And you can still buy it for them, but help them to recognize what it is. McDonald's, definitely not a need. You know, it's a want. And it's very interesting because I also saw a documentary where younger children, the ages of around kindergarten, could all recognize the symbol of McDonald's. It didn't matter what abilities they have. They all knew it. So I thought to myself, and I asked a couple of kids, do they know the symbol of the nearest bank? I mean, as a parent, we go there all the time. Do their children know the symbol of the nearest bank? Because what's going to help them, it's not the McDonald's side when they grow up. It's the banking institution that's going to help them. So something to think about. But I thought that was kind of interesting. They all knew it. Up from ages 3 and up. You just show the sign and you knew who it was. Helping your children do a dream map. The summer is coming. This is a great time to, if you have rainy days, you can get together and do a collage using magazines or other items in the house to create a dream map for your kids. One of the great things about dream maps, and I've used with younger children and parents that I've worked with have said it's been so great, is that when the children come to you with temptations, you can actually point to the dream map and say, you know what? I know you really want that new game, but it's not on your dream map. So should we add it there or should we take something out? So get them to put some things that they want in their life, some things that are expensive, some things that are not, because it's good for us to encourage them to dream the impossible dream. But at the same time, it's good for us to be able to help them to limit their impulsivity. So dream maps are really a must. It's a good thing. You can post it at different places in the house, and it should be reviewed often so that, they can change, right? Sometimes they grow out of that. They want this week, the next week they don't want it. They can put it on the dream map. Helping young children to identify their assets are important too. When it comes to finances, I know parents are always saying, oh, they don't treat the items well, they don't always take care of it. Well, we can help them so to understand that those things that they have with them are assets. They're things that are going to help them later on. Child asset mind map. These are things of getting them to understand who's around them that can help them. In the last pages, I have some information on tools and questions for us to help children when we're looking at child asset maps. So peers. It's a picture of a couple of kids playing there, or a couple of kids lined up by the school bus. Peers are an asset. Good friendship skills are an asset. Family and friends, child caregivers, those are assets, right? If they have a piggy bank, those are assets. So we can help them to identify many things around their world and in their life and in their community. That's an asset. Another strategy in terms of looking at assets that we can use is nowadays we all have access to digital cameras. So you can use digital cameras to your benefit. Take pictures of your grocery stores, of the banks, and other places that are assets for your children that they can see. So if you're going to go to the grocery store, you can ask them, which one are we going to go today? They can point out, is this going to be Save For? Is this going to be Save on Foods? Is this going to be Superstore? Let them know which stores cost the most, which stores are cheaper. These are small things that you can do with children that are kind of inherent that you can build up in your home to be part of money management skills. So now we move to strategies for adolescents. And adolescents are tough to work with money management because there's so many things that are pulling at them. There's a lot of commercials, there's a lot of wants, there's a lot of needs that they'll tell you about, but there's still lots of strategies, and the adolescents that I've worked with have often had a huge eye-opener once they have had some financial literacy training. This is why it's important for adolescents to get financial literacy training. So you have opened an account with your child at the age of 6 now. I believe that when they get to around 12 to 13, you have to walk through that again with them because they probably forgot, obviously, when they were 6 years old. So getting them to understand what is needed to open a bank account. So you need 2 pieces of ID and an address, where to go, who to talk to. These things might seem basic, but for some children with FASD and depending on their function abilities, we have to break the steps down. And breaking the steps down will help them to succeed. So where to go to, who to talk to, what type of account is best for you. If your teen is using Interact all the time for everything, then you want to work with the bank to give them Interact transactions that are free. Otherwise, they'll end up spending $25 to about $50 a month on interest charges. Limit on spending. One of the ways you can do that is some companies, banking companies, I know President Choice does it, where you can put a 24-hour hold on your savings account. So if your teen wants to take their money out, you have to think about it for 24 hours before they can do it. This helps to reduce impulse control, and it helps reduce temptations to buy things that they don't need and things that they do want. So you can have 2 accounts, one for spending and one for savings. Teach them the importance of password protections. I know teens are often so busy and thinking about so many things that they often don't think about protecting their password. And that's something that we have to make sure that we teach them. Knowing the location of the closest ATM. Walk with them to the ATM. Get them to scan the area, the closest ATM to you or to their work or to their school. Hands-on is the way for us to go. Walk with them, get them to understand that when you're taking money out, look around you to make sure it is safe before you do so. Limiting transactions. Some of the parents that I've worked with who have children with severe ADHD or who have difficulty with impulse controls, that they have had access to their children's accounts. So they are also on the account as well. So what it does is that it gives them the ability to monitor sometimes what their children are spending their money. And due to telephone banking and internet banking, parents can have access to instant information on where their children are spending their money. And some parents have been using it to track where their children are going as well. So often it shows up if they've been at a store on the West End, you'll be able to access that information within 2 hours, that they spend it at the McDonald's here or they spend it at a different store. One of the things that we have to teach children and adolescents when we're talking about money management is 3 most important things. And you start with the allowances. If you give them an allowance, let's divide it into 3. 1 for saving, 1 for spending, and 1 for charity. And it could be any amount that they decide to give for charity. It's important for us to teach children to give back. Sometimes teens have said to me, well, what difference does it make? I can get my money anywhere. I can go to payday loans and I can just get my money right away. And I've had to go back and talk to them about why it's important to open a bank account. So it's easy for us to track your money and your spending. If we're trying to make a budget and you don't know where your money is going, it's really, really hard to make a budget. So tracking makes it easier. It's low cost and low risk. It helps you to build credit. There's less temptations. Although now with debit cards, I find that it's really hard for teens to avoid spending. So limiting the number of transactions or limiting the amount of money in the spending account might be helpful for teens. So once again, reinforce savings and saving accounts and people that they can count on. Telephone banking and internet banking. These are things that you have to walk your teens through. It's not enough to say, oh, this is what you do with telephone banking. This is not what you do with internet banking. We have to walk them through. Telephone banking can be quite cumbersome and complicated. So if you have speakerphone or if you want to be on the other line, you can help walk them through what line to push and see if they're able to do it. When they master it, then maybe you can let them see if they can do it themselves. It's important for us to allow teens to make some financial decisions, and sometimes they'll result in consequences that we don't always find helpful for them, and sometimes they have successes. But we have to let them make some of the small mistakes while they're young and hopefully use it as a way to teach them. Now, I know that sometimes individuals with FASD, depending on the functioning level, may not always learn from consequences. So you have to let them you as a parent, as a caregiver, as a service provider, you know your teens, figure out which decisions they can make on your own and which decisions it's important for you to intervene in. Be supportive with your advice and encourage them to spend wisely. And the most important thing to do with teens is for you as the role model to watch the way you spend your money. If you are impulse buying, if you're hoarding, if you're overspending, it's very hard for you to impart that information by saying to them, you know what, you better watch your money. They're watching you. One of the things that I have seen when working with adolescents and young adults that I think we have to try and help them with is learning how to cook for themselves. I know this seems kind of strange because we have there's so many places where we can get food so easily that often teaching children and youth how to cook is not something that we think about often. There are many, many internet recipes that are really good and simple to use that requires 8 or less ingredients. So by the time the adolescent is leaving home or leaving care, they should be able to make about 10 meals for themselves that require only 8 ingredients that are easy to make. Shopping with your teens regularly. I know for some kids who are in care, who are living in the SIL programs, they're getting some support with their caregivers and support workers to address some of the issues of grocery shopping, knowing which areas are the most expensive areas. There's always that rule of thumb, is that if you shop on the outside of the supermarket, you spend less money. If you go on the inside lanes, you always spend a lot more money, because that's where a lot of the junk food and packaged foods are. And packaged foods always cost more than unpackaged foods. And they're not always the most nutritious for you. So regular grocery shopping with your kids and giving them opportunity to practice buying those things are important. They can come home and make those things as well. Teaching teens some of the obstacles with some of the financial pitfalls I've talked about is important. And you can also make it fun. What I've done with teens in the past, I don't know if everybody can see, is that I've come up with a cube, and the teens actually make it themselves, and we write some obstacles that would come for in terms of money management. And what we do is you throw the dice, and whatever question comes up, we come up with some solutions. So one of them could be, one of the ones that they had was, as a grown up, you have no money for your gas because you decide to spend money on television. So what can you do? You can either walk, you can take a bus, or you can ask a friend for a ride. These might seem kind of simple for some of us, but for some teens, we needed to break it down. And so if you see your teens has some areas where they really struggle financially, they're really impulsive, you can make some of these activities fun for them, and you don't think they're learning, but they are. And then you can kind of help them come up with some solutions that are worthwhile for them, and that will make financial money management easier and helpful for them. Some of the obstacles for teens is the mall. The mall is not only a place to buy for things, for them it's a place to socialize. So they're easily tempted to buy items. The mall also has lots of ways to encourage us to buy things. You see a big sign on the window, sale, 50% off, and then you go and it's a small print and it says, on selected items. Well, by the time you get to that place, you already walked into the store, and a couple of things have caught your eye, and that's what they want. So we have to help teens figure out what they're wanting to do at the mall. And maybe if you're going to the mall and the mall is a huge temptation, leaving your debit card at home might be an advice that we might want to encourage them to use. We know peer pressure is also an issue for teens when it comes to money management. This my friend has this, therefore I want the same thing. We can refer them back to the mind map and the asset map in terms of things they want as well, and hopefully that will take some of the pressure off. Helping teens to identify their needs versus their wants. This information is there for you to think about and for you to help teens come up with. Adolescents' dream mind map. Like I've said, adults are using, we want to pare it down to the teens. The teens might come up with different things that are on their mind map, and we have to encourage them and be okay with them putting whatever it is they want to put on their dream map. I've had some teens tell me they want a Lamborghini, and I've said, okay, let's put it on your dream map. And other children, other teens have come up with really realistic things. So you can put some really big things, and let's put some really small things. And you can say, okay, in the next 6 months, in the next year, and in the next 5 years, what things do you want to acquire? We can also help adolescents to identify their assets. What are some of the things that are assets? Getting a job, a paper route, electronics that they have, those are all assets. I know sometimes you don't think of it that way, but it helps them to get engaged with other teens and its communication. So we want to encourage them to use that wisely. Adolescent mind map. This is something that we can also do with adolescents. With adolescents, one of the biggest caution that I have for parents, caregivers, and service providers is to help adolescents to avoid, as much as possible, cell phone bills. I can't tell you how many groups I've done with adolescents or work with adolescents where before they even have a job, they have a cell phone bill. And often it's in the thousands, and they are avoiding the cell phone company, or they go to a different company and they build up another bill. The reasons why some of this has happened is advertising and marketing. So a teen will go to a cell phone company, and the cell phone company will say, okay, for $30 to $40 a month, you have access to 100 daytime minutes, free evenings and weekends. $40. Okay, no problem. But what they tell you also is that if you're a first-time user, you have unlimited access for 3 months, all day long. So you can use your daytime minutes as much as you want. So what happens is teens get hooked. For the first 3 months, they make daytime minutes that are unlimited. And we all know that it takes about 21 days for us to create a habit. So by the time the third month comes in, they're already hooked. But the service that they paid for is only 100 minutes for a month. But they've been using unlimited minutes for the last 3 months. So how do you change that habit? By the time they figure out to change the habit, you're already in debt. First, the last 3 months, they've been calling everybody to tell them they got a new iPhone or this, and they've been making all these phone calls. But they can't afford it. So the fourth month, the bills are coming, and they're $100, $200, $300, and they get buried by these bills. So as much as possible, cell phones have become very easy for us to access, but it comes with a price, and teens are not always aware of what the price means. And sometimes they think, if I avoid this company, they can't find me, it won't show up. But it will follow them later on when they go to get credit. So cell phones are one of the biggest obstacles that are for teens that I have worked with, and I encourage them to buy the pay-as-you-go, because if you don't, once you finish spending it, it's done. Some of the money management tools that I've added for you to use with your family and with the individuals that you work with are the identifying the needs and wants. As a family, you can sit together and look at what are your needs as a family, what are your wants as a family, what are some of the individual needs in the family as well. Tracking your expenses, I've added those in terms of household, utility, groceries, savings. Savings are expenses. Let's make sure we pay ourselves first. Monthly credit card payments, put it down. Tracking your expenses. These are some of the items that I've put on the families and individuals may want to keep track of. Birthdays, gifts, and presents. Christmas are always a really tough time for individuals with low incomes because we don't often plan for it. It comes every year, but when it shows up, we're all surprised. And we're like, oh, look, all of a sudden by January 1st, you start hearing the music in the mall, and you think, my goodness, I have to buy the most grandest gift, but I don't have money. And we turn to credit to satisfy our emotional needs. And then January comes along, and then we realize we don't have the money. And that leads to, and if you don't have the money in December, the chances are you're not going to have it in June either. So planning for those kind of things can help a lot. And that is something you can plan for. If you were to take away $50 each month, or if you skipped your coffee each day and put away that money, that could be the money that you use for gifts. So these are some of the things that I've added for you to look at, to use for yourself, and to ask questions. So, in conclusion, money management skills can definitely be enhanced with individuals with FASD. We have to help them avoid pitfalls, look at some of the habits that are created when we spend our money, tracking our spending, savings. These are all things that can help individuals with FASD manage their money better. Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions either in the room or either in the video conferencing land, or Aaron?
Nothing's coming through.
Okay.
Anybody have questions in here?
One of the things I would like to,
I was just going to ask Priscilla, one of the things that people with FASD and limited abilities and means don't have access to credit cards or to debit cards or those kinds of tools. So what would you suggest for those folks?
For those folks, there are some companies, for credit card companies, there are some companies who are willing to give limited, you can reduce the amount of credit that you have. So some companies are willing to do that, or if they have a trusteeship or an individual that's helping them manage their money, they can also go with them to the bank to access those services for themselves. I worked with a young man who had very low limited ability and was around 18 to 20 years of age, and he didn't have a bank account. And it's not, he had money, but he just never had a bank account. Nobody had ever thought about walking with him to do that. And sometimes I think what came across that he might not be able to use it. There was an assumption made that he might not be able to do it. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. He had very limited memory. The only thing he can often remember is his address. So what I did was when we went to the bank, and I had to go with him about 5 times to access his information. So we signed up at the bank, he got his card, and for his PIN number, he used the address, the thing that he can remember the most. Now, for most of us, they tell us, do not use your address, do not use anything that people can gain access to. But for him, he was on smoke. At the beginning, we had to start with what he can remember. And as time went on, we came up with other numbers that he could remember and switch the PIN numbers. So sometimes, even individuals with low cognitive ability, I think there's a lack of opportunity for them to try to access some of these things. I mean, lots of these people play video games. You know, they're able to get to the next level of the next video game. So we can adapt those skills. So it might be the favorite video game individual, the favorite video game character they might use as a password. So we can use some of those tricks to help them remember and to gain access to those finances.
Do you know if there are any video games that would be helpful in developing money management skills?
So far, unfortunately, I haven't found any. I've been looking severely, and I'm wanting to develop my own for individuals with FASD and cognitive disabilities, because there isn't a lot. There is some, but they need to be adapted. So I haven't been able to find any yet. I don't know if anybody else has found anything else that they can pass along to us that has been helpful. On the internet, though, there are some simple money management tools for younger children that can be adapted for individuals with FASD. So agencies and organizations can actually look at adapting some of those basic skills. But once again, it's about repetition and opportunity to practice. So if we can create those, that might be helpful.
Do you have a reference for those sites?
Yeah, one of the references is on, I believe is added on to the material that was handed out. I don't know if for those people who don't have questions, I know there's lots of knowledge out there. Are there any other information in terms of, are there any experiences that people can share with the rest of us of strategies or things that they have used to manage their own money, and what they've used with children and teens with FASD that might be helpful, that I haven't mentioned, that may be helpful to other people who are struggling with this issue?
They actually won't be able to talk because they're all muted.
Yeah, if you can type it in or send us a text, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, if you can post it later on or give us feedback, that would be grateful. This is something we're wanting to expand on. Money management and financial literacy is huge for all of us, and I think for individuals with low-income families, low-income financial means, we want to continue to build on this. So more information, the better.
I wonder if it would be helpful, Priscilla, if people sent you their strategies, and then maybe you could prepare something that could be posted
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah, that's really great. If anybody has information, they can always contact me on the contact information. I'd really appreciate some of the practical tips that are coming. This is a bit foreign because there are strategies for money management for individuals and teens, but we have to adapt it for individuals with FASD. So that requires us to take the extra step, and I'm vigorously wanting to adapt it and make it better and create a computer program which can help individuals manage financial literacy better. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priscilla. Yeah, with lots of good suggestions and thought-provoking ideas, so I'm sure that we'll all be able to benefit from that. Just a reminder to everybody out there and here to that an evaluation will be emailed to you, and within the next couple of business days, so please respond to the evaluation. The feedback is really, really important to the information that we use to develop the series. And the final, I believe the next session is the final session of this year. It is scheduled for June 30th, is it not, Erin? Yeah, and that session is titled "FASD as a Person and as a Parent." The Liz Lorick is going to be interviewing a mom who herself has FASD and has been very successful in raising her child with FASD. So please mark your calendars if you haven't done so already. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.